Hello and welcome to the 12th installment of migrating of all of the expansion cards in Terraforming Mars. In episode number 11 we completed the last bit of the Venus Next deck. I then put it to a vote to see what you wanted next and you chose Colonies. I'm happy to oblige. I will rank these cards mostly as if I was playing just with base game, preludes and Colonies. But I will also include Venus Next into the equation, as especially some of the floater cards combo well with that expansion. As always, if you want insight into the grading system, check out the description, or click on the link in the top right hand corner to get to the first video, where I explain it all. If you want to know how I go about ranking the expansion cards compared to the base game cards, check out the first video of rating expansion cards, which is also linked in the description. Air Raid is the first card in the Colonies deck when going through it alphabetically, and it is a difficult one to rate. It seems like a stronger version of Hired Raiders with a caveat. Since it costs 0 MC instead of 1, and since you steal MC, it is between 3 and 5 MC stronger than Raiders, depending on whether you would have stolen MC or steal with that card. So why is it so hard to rate? Well, because of the floater you need to pay to play it. Not only does this floater mean that you sometimes just cannot play Air Raid, for example in basically all rush games, it also means that in the cases in which you can play it, you lose a floater worth of value. But what is a floater worth? Well, that heavily depends on the situation. If we ignore the niche scenario in which losing the floater either costs you Hoverlord or Eccentric, a floater can be worth roughly 1 titanium, or a point, or a third of a Venus bump, or half a power prod, or nothing at all, and the list goes on. Most of these things are worth between 3 and 5 MC, so basically all of the upside of Air Raid over Hired Raiders. The cases in which you just cannot play the card are in my opinion not quite balanced out by the cases in which the floater was worth nothing. By the way, when is a floater worth nothing? Well, for example in the case when you play a Celestic and get your first floater collecting card down in Gen 2. That single floater on your corp from Gen 1 will probably never get any friends and score a point, so you can happily spend it with Air Raid. Or maybe it's the last gen and you'll end the game with an uneven number of floaters and floating hebs. But I digress. Basically, I think Air Raid is a sometimes stronger but much nichier version of Hired Raiders. I think it should land at the upper end of C tier, but in higher player counts where there's one or more players not affected by it, it's definitely worse. This next card feels a bit like it was pulled straight out of Venus Next, both in terms of theme and strength. Airliners is another super niche floater card, and this time it's a bit too niche. If you add together the cost of the MC prod and the point, you might notice that you get the floaters basically for free. The 2 MC prod costs 9 MC due to sponsors and 1 VP is 5 MC due to dust seals. So we end up with 14 MC, which is exactly the cost to buy and play Airliners. But the requirement means you basically cannot use it effectively for floater cards that want you to spend the floaters immediately after placing them, like Local Shading, Red Spot Observatory or Titan Air Scrapping. So in its best case scenario, Airliners requires you to have a floater collecting point card down, and early, since it grants 2 MC prod, and that isn't all that useful in the mid to late game. That's a scenario that doesn't happen all that often in my experience. And if it does, all you get quote unquote for free are 2 floaters, which is probably just 1 point. Again, something that isn't all that valuable early on. The fact that Airliners doesn't come with a tag hurts its combo potential by a lot. So, in my experience, Airliners is just good for claiming Hoverlord fast and not much else. D tier in my opinion. But let's get to a useful card, Atmo Collectors. A real floater theme with these first 3. In general, Atmo Collectors fits really well into the Colonies expansion. You can use it to trade with a colony with power immediately in the gen you play it. That's something that's usually really hard to achieve. In my experience, this is the most regular use case of Atmo Collectors. But what's really cool about the card is that it's not the only thing you can do with it. If the colonies or the state they're in does not appeal to you, you can also take titanium or heat. Or you use the card to trade for a few gens until you find Power Prod, and afterwards you switch to Gathering Titanium. Another upside of Atmo Collectors is that the 2 instant floaters can be really helpful for Hoverlord. But the fact that you can place them anywhere you like is usually not that important. Not a lot of other cards grant a better payoff than Atmo Collectors. For example, compare the 2 titanium per floater with a card like Titan Shuttles, which grants just 1 for 1. It would have maybe been relevant for point scoring if you had been able to put the floaters you place with the action on any other card as well. Then you could have used the card in combination with Floating Habs or Jovian Lanterns for a few points. But no, the action floaters need to go on Atmo Collectors itself. All in all, I quite like this card when playing with Colonies. It's a bit annoying again that it doesn't hold a tag, but it's still B tier to me. I just said how annoying it is that both Airliners and Atmo Collectors don't have any tags. Why is that? Well, because there's only a single really bad card that can combo specifically with cards without tags. And we'll get to that one right now. Community Services. Why is this card so bad? If you're playing with Base Game, Prelude, Venus Next and Colonies, just 21 out of 313 project cards have no tag. In contrast, there's 76 building tags, 47 science tags and 37 earth tags. So cards without tags are really rare. And another problem is that many of them are just plain bad. Cloud Seeding, Dust Seals, Hackers, Caretaker Contract, Red Suits, Airliners, these are just a few examples. So you will not be able to find a lot of tagless cards, and chances are, if you do, they are shit. And that makes Community Services shit. You would need 3 tagless cards for it to be better than its price suggests, and at least 4 for it to be really good. But you're on a timer doing that, because the card derives its value from MC Prod. So all in all, Community Services is just a sad joke of a combo card for cards that are known for not comboing with anything. F tier in my opinion. But let's end this first Colonies episode with a better card. Conscription. This is basically indentured workers on steroids. Yes, it has a requirement, so it can be hard to play in Gen 1 to get your most immediate development going, and definitely that's a knock on the card. As is the fact that the discount it provides requires you to play quite an expensive card. For example, you can't effectively use it to play Restricted Area or Acquired Company. But even with these 2 small downsides, it's an amazing card. Instead of Indentured Workers' 5 MC effective discount, that in theory is completely negated by the negative VP, this card grants an effective 8 MC discount. So it doesn't only provide a lot of tempo, it also provides 3 MC worth of value that Conscription does not. And the Earth tag it holds and the cost of the card mean that there is much more combo potential for it. For me, Conscription is an A tier card. I really like it in basically any strategy. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments whether you agree with my ratings, or if not, how you would have rated these cards differently. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And lastly, please check out my Twitch and my Twitter. See you in the next video.